You're listening to Real Estate and Bourbon. Whether you like it neat or on the rocks, you're in the right place. And now your host, Dawn Roy.
Hey there, my sweet friends. It's Dawn and another episode of Real Estate and Bourbon. And I'm so glad you're here today because I have an amazing, amazing guest. This is my sweet and precious brother, Chris. And
girl.
Hey, baby boy. And
From the same mother.
Is this on?
From the same mother. Well, funny that you say that because we don't look alike at all.
My hands don't know what to do
Put
with
your
my
hands down.
hands.
Ricky Bobby, put your hands down. He looks just like mother. I looked exactly like dad. And when we frequent, when he's down, because he lives in Northern Virginia, he's a pilot with Southwest. And when he comes to visit, we have a tendency to visit bars. I mean,
Stay hydrated.
So, usually the female bartenders try to hit on him
Not really.
because he's a good-looking dude.
No.
And I have to say something forward,
No,
like
I say something. I always say like my
sister
would like another.
will take a martini straight up.
Call it a martini.
And then all of
But
a
these
sudden
are-
you see these ladies go, oh, good, you know.
They're pretty
so then
women,
they
but
sit
they're
there and
like
they flirt
half
like I'm
my
not
age.
even there. I'm like,
I like to
what?
flirt. Okay.
So anyway, yeah, we don't look alike, do we, Michael?
Is this on?
There's no, yeah.
Who's older now?
I'm older by 21 months.
Okay.
Really close.
So you guys were pretty tight in high school
You know, funny thing, not really.
or grade school?
You know why we weren't tight in high school? I was drum major my senior year, and he played saxophone and stood in the back of the marching band with all of his little buddies, cutting up and doing all. And I tried to discipline, and he goes, "I'm telling mother on you."
My sister was in band all through middle school and high school, and she was drum major for junior and senior. And I got into jazz band like halfway through high school.
Yeah.
Because everyone's like, oh, you play guitar? We need a jazz player. And she hated it.
Yeah.
She hated that I was in there.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I was in her territory.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, you got the whole entire school,
Yeah,
but you have to go in here?
yeah. Well, you know, and of course I'd go to mother and say, you know, he's acting up, and I can't get respect from the other bandmates if he doesn't respect me, and because he was the what?
Number one son.
I never. She always. It didn't matter. So he.
Squeaky clean.
Oh my God, he could do no wrong. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
I could have shot someone in downtown Manhattan. And got away with it.
It's true. It's true. But he did play the game with her better than myself. I'm more of like,
He knew how to play the game.
he played the game. I'm like, in your face, this is what I'm doing. I'm not, pretending to be something I'm not. He tells her what she wants to hear and then goes and does what he wants to do.
You get her all ruffled up, and I get the feathers smooth again.
He would.
And I need a $20 bill in the keys of the car. The car.
Whenever I needed clothes in high school, I'd be like, hey, Mom, want to go to lunch? And then I knew we'd end up at the mall, and I knew she'd end up paying for everything. So I'd come back with a bag of clothes, and my sister would be like,
Oh, it's ridiculous. Daughters who have mothers with a son younger than, if the daughters, I don't know how this all works out, but it's ridiculous how favored he was. But the funny thing about it is we became super close as adults. That never interfered with our relationship because even though he really was the favorite, he didn't use it to attack me, and I
Right.
didn't use it to be angry with him.
Oh,
If that
okay.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So. But we became much closer once we both got married, had children, and then both went through divorces. And we called each other and FaceTime, and a lot of Tito's has been drunk FaceTiming because he did live in Dallas. And that's kind of the premise of the podcast today, is to talk about a seller's point of view of selling your home, especially in a distressful situation like,
I was wearing a dress.
oh my God.
Oh, distressed. I thought
Yeah,
I was wearing a
distressed.
pantsuit, but you're right. It was
Yeah.
distressed. I was a little frantic trying to sell the home.
He was in Dallas at the time, and then he moved in with me for about 4 months. They were a blur. It was just a constant.
I had to go to work so she'd dry out. We both had it. It was good.
So speaking of drying out, we're not doing that today. We're going to have a lovely bourbon that is double oaked. So double oaked means they take it from one barrel for a seasoning and putting it into another barrel for seasoning. And this one was...
what's the purpose of that?
It just, so each barrel is going to kind of have their own, because you're talking about a natural product like wood, so tree, and where that tree grew has its own properties. And so each barrel is going to have a little bit of a different nuance to it. So they take it from one charred, it has to be charred now. So one charred barrel and they stick it in another one. And this one went to a sherry oak barrel.
Okay.
That was finished with sherry oak staves. So got a little bit of a nice finish on there. Now the purpose here is to not drink the whole bottle in the 30 minutes that we're here.
We haven't had anybody pass out yet.
Although Charles Merrill almost came close.
He was sweating bullets.
He was sweating bullets.
I remember that one. I'm going to rewatch that one.
And Charles helped Chris. He just did his refinance on his house up in Northern Virginia. So here's to you, my sweet, precious angel.
New Year's Eve, third time this week.
Third time this week. There you go.
I used to do bourbon on the rocks quite a bit, and I learned from my sister and Charlie to
Drink it neat.
Neat.
Mm-hmm. Don't ruin the bourbon with ice.
And just sip it. Don't eat
Just
dinner
sip
with it. Eat dinner with some water.
Yeah, this is a sipping. That's really got a nice finish on it.
Yes.
Really lovely, actually. I like that. So as I said earlier, and something that you are very interested in, Michael, Chris is a captain with Southwest.
Oh, I didn't know you were a captain.
Oh, he's a
Man.
big bitch.
It's automatic. It's an escalator. Once you get there, you're going to get promoted or upgraded with time.
As
Well,
long as you don't
survived-
crash the plane.
You survived the COVID layoff time, where people were getting basically forced to retire because there was.
But the industry offered. We didn't know how long it was going to
pilots.
last, so they offered the senior men and women to take a little bit of money take
Did
money.
Did you know to stay with it, or did you?
I was still kids in college. I was not married, divorced at the time, but just still men and women who were much closer to retirement.
Yeah.
The kids are already out the door,
Right.
So they took money, and it depends on how long you were there. But 600 American guys left, and then maybe a couple hundred of our guys and gals left. So, but then the industry came back everybody just came back post COVID.
Now they're having problems with getting
Because they don't have the pilots.
Yeah, so
it's the truth.
That's why there's all these chain of reactions throughout the day. When if a couple planes go out of whack for whatever reason, then everything else goes out.
Yeah,
well, any little thing, weather changes everything, and unfortunately, because they don't have enough pilots to fill the seats, they're lowering the requirements.
So I traveled a lot throughout the years when I worked for a company. So I was on a plane Monday through Thursday for 2 years, basically. So I got to learn the industry as my mom was in the industry. So when you see a lot of planes in the hangar, more than just being serviced,
right?
It's like that there's issues with other things where there's no pilots and there you got so many issues and stuff like that. So flying these days is not what it is even 5 years ago.
Well, and two, another problem that they have that I have experienced going back and forth to Florida here in the last 6 months or so. A lot of it also depends on the crew that's at the airport, because you've got planes that come. I have sat out on, the tarmac for an hour because they don't have a gate to put you at, because they don't have all the gates open because there aren't enough staff to manage them.
When was the law passed where they couldn't stay in the plane? Because I stayed in Chicago one time, or Cincinnati, for 6 hours one time. It was because the tow kept on breaking. We were stuck in this, it was like a blizzard, and they kept on breaking the tow, bringing us in with that. When did that law?
Well, the one that I remember is a big one. It was really northwest in Detroit, I think. They had a freak snowstorm, but it's like a weekend, which is classic when the most senior people of any parts of the organization are off. You have the more junior people around the. So they just kept sending them to Detroit. I want to make sure. I think it's Detroit. So all these planes are landing in Detroit with 4 foot of snow, and they were on a plane for 8 hours.
Yeah, there's a law now where they have to get you off the plane over a certain time.
I've got a takeoff or landing at 30 minutes. I've got to do something. At 60 minutes, I got to do something. An hour and a half, I got to do something.
Yeah.
I think it's like $25,000 per person per
right.
fine. It can be.
So
we're bending over backwards to keep everybody comfortable.
Well, listen, I don't mind having if something's wrong with the plane or there is an issue. I'm okay with being in the airport, but do not leave me in that tin can for a long period of time.
Unless I'm in first class. So
if I'm in first class and you're
I'll be a
serving
little bit
Woodford
longer.
Reserve, then y'all can forget my ass. I'm fine. But that, I can't take it because I don't like to sit still anyway. So it's all I can do to be there on the plane for the amount of time I think I'm going to be.
What's your craziest flight story? Like just something that freaked happen or funny or whatever. Like one that.
As far as like recently, my last flight, we were Los Angeles to Baltimore, Washington. Was the ground delay because of so much weather in Washington. So what you were talking about, I had to make the decision to talk to the operations agent. We got to get these people off the airplane.
Yeah.
No way we can keep on there. And the operations agent, sometimes they want to leave them on the airplane
To
in
keep
case
them,
things change.
Yeah.
But you have older people and kids. I said, look. So I get on there and I make the PA and I'm looking right down at them and tell them what's going on.
He stands there in front of the aisle.
Only
so
when
they
it's a
can
really
see.
weird, like, hey, look, there is a crazy storm in Baltimore, Washington. Let's get everybody off the plane. You don't have to get off, but eventually everybody got off, got food, and then about 40 minutes later they got back on. But to answer your question, I lost a hydraulic system going into Harlingen, Texas, St. Padre Island. So you look up and ding, ding. So it was really with a nice young kid, and we ran the checklist, had to declare an emergency, and land flaps 15, which is like a much less flap setting. Had to throw some other switches. It was kind of exciting. It was fun, really, but
Only to him.
But it's like
I would be
You'd be like, Captain, we're inverted.
messing in my pants. I'm just
one
telling
light came on. It's like a low hydraulics, and then it's okay.
What
we
does
can
that
work this.
mean?
Well, so there's hydraulic fluid under pressure that drives the landing gear,
Gotcha.
the flaps. It supports
It's like your brakes.
Exactly, braking, the
all the
ailerons.
things that's going to help me
Yeah.
gracefully fall out of the sky.
So you have a system, B system, and a backup. So when the lights came on, that's interesting. It's an older airplane. It's just an older airplane. And all of a sudden the second one
look
came
at that.
on.
It looks like a Christmas tree up there.
So it was my legs, a young guy. So you just kind of relax. You don't lose your mind. Say, hey, I can't remember his name. Say, hey, get the checklist.
So he was a young pilot.
Yeah. We just met one leg, and from Houston to Houston for Harlingen, Texas. So I said, okay, hey, you look up there and see what it is. Low oil pressure, low hydraulic pressure on the A system. So he gets it out, and they got a little caption that tells you the big picture. You're going to land flaps 15. You've got to use an alternate method to get the flaps out. And I went, yes, I'm going to land flaps 15. This is going to be awesome, dude. This is going to be awesome. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a great time. So the next 30 minutes, we're in a low volume, low stress environment. There's nobody out there but us. So I talked to,
Did you talk into the tower, tell him what's going on?
You start working it. I got on the thing. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be a little delayed. We're going to land. There's something going. It's a little. You're trying to say something like, you don't say anything.
The plane is fucked up and we're all going to die. That's $1 into the jar today.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be doing so. Oh my God! Don't touch that switch. So eventually,
What'd you do?
It's very good. Oh my God! What's that goat doing up here? So you land, flaps 15, you pull up, and you just drug hydraulic fluid. You just pouring out of the wing like it's nobody's business. Just a shower.
So anybody on the windows, the wing
They
side,
couldn't
did they see it?
No, they can't see it. And it's dark. Land flaps 15. The deck angle is about this high. Just walk it on with a little bit of power, turn right off, and they're marching and they're going. And then we go. And I opened the door and said, "You got to come down and see this." And I walked down. It's just like a shower of hydraulic fluid.
When you first had to land,
It was great.
When you first had to land the first time, when you had a huge crosswind, and when you had to whip that nose to land, because I've been in the plane where I'm like, I'm looking at the runway right now, and he's gonna, what was that experience like the first time you had to do that for real?
You learn it from the very
Because it's messed
beginning.
up.
Yeah, it's like if I'm coming at you, it should be no wind. I'm coming like this, but if the wind's coming this way, I'm coming like that. But eventually, I gotta
You got to turn into
roll
it.
it out.
Yeah.
What you tend to get experience, you overcompensate. You roll the nose too far over. But
And does that push? And that pushes you?
Yeah, well, that keeps me from going
Yeah.
downward. Some of the bigger airplanes with the longer little strakes, like that, we got a limit on how much. If it's too much of a crossing, we just have to land in a crab. Yeah, and that's not the bait. Keep a little power in and just roll it on, kick it around. It's like, sometimes you're into it and you're having fun. Sometimes it's like, oh man, last time I did this, cratered it.
To the flying public, it's a good thing we don't really know what the hell is going on up in the cockpit.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about, I think Michael would love to have you over to talk about planes for the next 2 hours. He would be thrilled about it.
Or his pretty
Or
guitar
his
up there.
cool Van Halen Eddie guitar.
Stack singles in the
And
bridge,
they
one volume
talked. They've talked. I'm really here just to take up space because the two of them have bonded. They're buds. They're bros now. Let's talk about you're selling the house in Dallas pretty much last year this time. It was during the summer. By the time I connected you with Rachel and all the fun stuff. So, unfortunately, as it were, you and your ex were going through a divorce. You're going to keep the house in Dallas because you also have a home here in Gainesville. But it just became more and more impractical, I think, to do that. And so, you know, folks like Michael and I who are in the real estate business, this is stuff we see all the time, but you don't experience it all the time. So I'd like to know from you, from a seller's perspective, not just my brother, you know, when you're selling a home and it's in a stressful environment, like it's stressful anyway to sell a house, but to do it through because of a financial situation like divorce, you know, what expectations did you have for that process, and were they met, and what are the things that you feel, I don't know, I mean, you know, I mean, you can say bad things about realtors, you can say good things about realtors. I just want to know from your perspective as a homeowner how that process evolved for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was definitely, I thought I was going to be able to keep the house, but, you know, with the divorce decree, I had to sell the home. The home. And, you know, I knew that, So I just needed professional representation, and you walked me through that process and met the gal, really nice gal, came over, and she already done her homework, laid out this profile about what we could do with this home. And just, you know, it's like, okay, I'm going to do that. First, you know, you just think, okay, I'm just going to sell it as is. I'm just going as is. I'll take whatever I get. But as we go through the process and she starts recommending things, then I started having some things upgraded and repaired. And again, it was just, you know, I just gave up more and more. You know, I knew she was going to take care of me. And I just trusted her more and more. She said, you need to replace that, need to paint that, need to fix that. I said, maybe you're right. And we started doing all that process. And eventually we reduced the price a little bit and got it sold within a very short period of time. But
I'm going to say you were in and out. And, well, I know you got a contract within the first 2 weeks or so. And, you know, at that time, this time last year, we started seeing the bump in the interest rates, right? So had he sold 6 months earlier, you would have gotten more for the house.
As is.
And it'd have been multiple offers. But as we got into last summer, then you started seeing the pricing of money, right? So that's what interest rates are. It's the cost of money go up, and that slowed the buyer pool. And, you know, it eventually did sell, and I think it was still a normal time frame, but it just is not what we were used to through COVID. You know what I mean? Because COVID, and be honest with you, there's pockets of Richmond here now that it's multiple offers, 100,000 over list. I mean, it's insanity.
Still today.
Still.
How long did you have the house?
We bought it in 16, so, you know, 7 years or so. Or.
Yeah. They moved to Frisco, rented for a year, then bought this house, and kept their home here in Virginia and rented it out, right? And that's why he moved in with me from like end of October to February. It's because his tenant was still there. So now we, you know, his tenant found a place and he moved in.
Great.
We still got to get you some furniture. Michael,
I'm in a 4-bedroom home with 2 air mattresses and a
kitchen
vodka,
table.
a little bit of vodka. But I'm having so much fun. And I got a guitar and I got a nice amplifier.
There you go.
I treat myself like
He has a guitar and an amplifier. This is the truth. He has an air mattress, a kitchen table, a guitar, and an amplifier.
And you made me buy the kitchen table.
And I made him, I said, Wayfair. You just go on Wayfair. I'm going to start sending you some stuff.
I didn't do Craigslist.
Anything. Get some furniture. A 4,000 square foot house. Furnish the house. Because he, you know, for his financial well-being, he needs to be in that home for 2 years.
Right.
So 2 years out of the last 5 to not pay capital gains. If he wants to sell this house now, he certainly can, but he's going to get hammered with capital gains because it's been a rental for 8-9 years. You know, so the government looks, you know, like, oh, you've had all this income coming in. They don't consider the mortgage and the taxes and the upkeep and all the things, you know. But if he can just get through 2 years, then he can sell the home and then decide where he wants to go, like to a maintenance-free townhouse or, you know, any of that stuff. You know what I mean? And I don't know but do you think that the process, because it's been a long time since you sold a home, because last home you sold was the townhouse you guys were in before you bought the house in Gainesville, which was how long ago?
Yeah, it was like
05?
Bought it in 01, sold it in 05.
Yeah.
And then
So that's a long span of time to not be a seller. Was it, I mean, did you have preconceived notions of how the process should go, or do you?
No,
what would you do differently if you could go back and we could be whipped back to June of last year? What would you have done differently?
Probably not a lot at all. I just, I trusted you to recommend someone,
right?
And then, you through your experience with her, the level that you knew or were comfortable with her, and then again, once she came in and I saw the package you had put together, I just slowly just relaxed and just, you're right, maybe I should replace because I thought, hey, as is. And she walks in, that sink, that kitchen sink, that's the original sink. This, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And just started, and then I started getting with it, started moving forward. Yeah, I think I'm going to paint this. I'm going to get a contractor over and fix
and
that.
And
the glass with the condensation.
Had some windows that had
it's about $4,000 in like, maybe 10, 12 days. I just started getting it done.
Yeah.
I started leaning forward and, it's like, this is going to be a good process.
But it's going to get you your house sold because the thing is, as Rachel knows and we all know, when we do photography, the house has to present a certain way to draw attention because everybody's searching for you like a dating app online. I mean, they're on Zillow or Redfin or Realtor.com or whatever portal they use. They're searching online, and if the pictures don't jump at you,
Well, what comes to mind for me since we're talking about a situation where you didn't know that you were going to be in, or it's a stressful time because there's stressful stuff happening behind the scenes of selling a home. It's not like a nice or a great thing, but I've seen it where there's just arguments within how the process is happening between the two people who are getting divorced. As
right.
I'm right there shooting the house.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's there's other factors that come into play where you can't even think straight.
Right.
And listen to the realtor because there's other.
Well, there's contingent.
Yeah, there's other things happening that.
Well, and thankfully, kudos to both he and Rhonda, his ex-wife. They both were, certainly, going through not such a pleasant time, but they're working with each other to facilitate this transaction, right? They're trying to, for me and you, for us to get to the goal that we've decided this is what we want, we've got to do this, right? I just had a client referred to me by this happened last year about the same time, for a divorce attorney, and the husband literally sat in the house. I had teed up an investor willing to pay them cash in 10 days, close, get some money in both of your pockets, get away from each other. Life is groovy. It needed to be an investor property because it was in such ill repair, not at all like Chris's home, which was very nice with a pool and all that fun stuff. And the husband was so intent on punishing the wife, he sat there till it went into foreclosure. And I went to the auction because I'm like, well, I've been in the house. My investor gave me a cashier's check. He goes, bid on that house. We've been in. We know what it looks like. We know what it's going to take to get it fixed up. We did get outbid. The investor who bought it paid too much for it, and because they've not been inside and they don't know what a total disaster it is. But that being said, my point is this. One of the things that I learned by this was on the steps of the courthouse at Chesterfield County off of Route 10. It is exactly what, there's an auctioneer, they're sitting there, they're raising, $100, who gives me this? So cool and fascinating. I suggest anyone who's going through a foreclosure, if you're in a divorce situation, this is the best seller's market in the history of our lifetime. And there's no reason to go to foreclosure. But if it does happen to you, get someone to go to auction, because whatever the sales price is, if it's different from what the bank is owed, the difference is yours. But you have to reach out to the trustee and request that money. So here's an example. This house ended up selling for $212,000. The bank was owed $192,000. After fees and stuff, whatever that difference is, those owners, that's their money. But unless they go and request it from the trustee, this is a trustee state. So your deed is already assigned to an attorney, somebody, the minute you sign your lender papers, okay? That money goes to you, but you've got to call and request that. And if you don't, that's theirs. And I didn't really realize that. And I think that's, there's so many little nuances. Don't go to foreclosure as, rule number one. Not right now. I mean, please, for the love of decency, reach out to someone like myself or Susan, a lot of realtors in this area. We have investors. We know people that'll buy it. and just move on with the process. Don't get into a pissing match with your ex-spouse to the point that this not only did they go the house, they lose the house, their credit's in the toilet. For what? For what? For nothing. So at least Rhonda and Chris worked amicably together. That's rule number 2. Be amicable through this process. It's to both of your benefit. No one wins in a piss match. No one wins. And it drives me crazy. And I've been in the same I've been in situations where I didn't think that it wasn't a divorce situation standing in their house, but it's just a couple and they're arguing like cats and dogs. I'm I think I'll step outside.
Right.
Like you were saying.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
Whatever low-lying anger.
I've been asked to step out as
Yes.
I'm like in the room. I'm like,
Yes.
okay. I was like, you got me for another 20 minutes. You got me for 20 minutes. If not, I'm gone.
Yeah.
So.
And it's unfortunate. And I've been in that situation with people buying homes. I've been in that situation with people selling their home. And if I follow up with them down the road, they're divorced. I mean, if there's so much animosity that you're willing to air that in front of a stranger.
What happens if there's a situation where someone owns a house and they're gonna say the husband or wife is gonna keep the house with the kids and stuff like that,
Right?
And how do you, if that person's on the deed as well?
Yes.
How does that work? You have to refinance, or you have to?
That's a great question. I actually had that happen. I had this couple, I sold them a house in Woodlake quite a few years ago. And they brought me to the house. They're getting a divorce, but they want to stay. Basically, they wanted to sell that home and then me sell each of them something in that school district because they didn't want the kids to have to change schools.
Right.
And the more I looked at it, I said, listen, and it's probably not a good business model to talk people out of selling their home. It probably doesn't pay my mortgage very well, but it's just the right thing to do. I said, one of you, because each of them by themselves could not afford that area, right? It took 2 incomes to buy this house in this area. I said, this is what needs to happen. Whichever is more financially stronger needs to refinance the house, pay an equity position to the other, and then I will work with that person to buy something. And that's what ended up happening. The wife refinanced the house. He got 15, whatever it was. I don't know the cash layout. And then I helped him buy a little house. It wasn't in that area. It was a different part of Chesterfield. But the kids got to, and I said to them, listen, it's going to be hard enough going through the divorce. Don't disrupt the kids any more than necessary. Don't make them leave their home. Right? So if you can make that happen, make it happen. So that's the way that's the way it happens. Now, if I'm the only one, you got to understand in Virginia and a lot of states, being married makes us co-equals to this house, right? So I own the house with you, whether I'm on the deed or not, right? Because if you die, it comes to me. But the best way to clean everything up is for one party to refinance, get that person off the note.
The mortgage statement.
Everything.
Yeah.
And then, because what he ended up doing, so he sells the house in Dallas. He finally moves back in February to the home in Gainesville. He works with Charlie, who's been on the program, and refinances to get her off of the note.
Yeah, which is by the divorce decree.
Yeah.
And the mortgage statement.
And and the note is the debt you owe to the bank. So to get her clear of that, so she has no risk. If he stops paying on the house, now it's on him. It doesn't affect her at all.
How long does that process take?
Well, the refinance.
Couple of weeks.
Yeah, it really depends when I wanted to execute it. It's like I just had to do it by a certain period of time.
I think by August he had to have it done.
Yeah. But then I realized that rates are
trending up, so might as well jump on it.
Jumping now.
Yeah.
So work with Charlie and it worked out fine.
Great questions. We're learning so much,
Man.
Mr. Michael.
Yeah, you just can't. If you go through a divorce, you just can't say, okay, hey, I got the house, and you just can't call up the mortgage company. Hey, can you just delete her name off the mortgage? You can't.
No,
It doesn't work that
doesn't
way.
work
You just
It does-
white it out.
Well, and some people, sometimes you can do a quick, if let's say Rhonda was not on the note, the mortgage, and she's only on the deed, you could just do a quick thing or whatever. But sometimes in very odd circumstances, and not always, it can trigger a due clause. Like you need to pony up because it was both of you on it. She's leaving now. Can you financially carry the house? That's what they're thinking, right? But she was on both. She was on the note and the deed. So refinancing was the best, process there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And and the reality is this. I think, and in my own divorce, I mean, it was. I'm not going to use the word amicable, but I had a mission, and I had an attorney, and I had it planned out, and I was going to get from A to Z, and that it's going to go smoothly, and it did relatively so. I think that when you start to make war with your soon-to-be ex-spouse, there's a lot of healing you need to do on your own because it's really not about them. It's about, everybody. Listen, I have no ill will to Joseph. I know you have no ill will to Rhonda. I'm not his person. He's not my person. That's it. That's all it is. You know what I mean? It's no harm, no foul. I spent a lot of years with you and had 2 beautiful children, and we're just going to call it a day. It's all good. But it doesn't have to be contentious, and it doesn't have to be ugly. That needs to be put aside, especially if you have children, because little ears are listening and watching. Yeah. I don't care how you massage that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Chris was really great at and his children are young adults, so they're not little, but letting them know, I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that your mother's taken care of, and this goes as smoothly for everyone as possible. And he's never said anything negative about her, which I think is fantastic, which everyone should do. That should just be the default, right? And so when you're having to sell a home through a process like this, everyone just get on the same team. Everybody starts, now I'm on this team and you're on, and we're fighting each other. Stay on the same side of the field and work together to get to the place that you both are really, it's going to make you happier, and call it a day. Don't be like these folks that I just dealt with, and I'm standing on the courthouse steps trying to bid on their house because one of the persons refused to leave the house and sign a very valid and a great offer, and would have a year ago put money in their pocket to get away from each other.
It's crazy.
It's beyond crazy.
They see red all day long.
They see
They're
red
in the red,
all day
yeah.
long.
Yeah.
I'm going to punish you even if I have to drink the poison. What is, hello? I am going to literally go under to make sure you drown. Even if I drown myself.
Right.
I'm going to tip this canoe over and we're both going in the water.
Yeah.
I just don't get it, and I think that's really, part of the reason I wanted to have Chris on and talk about this, other than, this bro relationship that's going on right now between guitars and airplanes. I just think that,
We'll be chit-chatting along on the plane like, wait, are we in Nashville?
I know, right? He's like, look at that. It's a really hot, you should show a picture of that on the,
it's hard for me
pop
to,
up a picture
I don't
on
play
that.
it much now these days, so it's hard for me to even touch it. So it's too close a situation of my upbringing of life and playing music and stuff like that. So Eddie Van Halen was he was the reason why I started. So
he's a big loss.
Yeah.
And for me, Stevie Ray Vaughan was a big loss.
Yeah.
Not because I play guitar or anything. I appreciate what he did coming out of Texas. That crazy rockabilly thing.
As a side note, for guitar players, people like to say my favorite the best guitarist is Eric Clapton or Stevie Ray Vaughan or Eddie Van Halen. You just can't. Something you just can't compare. They're 2 different sets of music. Eddie Van Halen doesn't play.
He was an innovator.
Yeah, they're different. They're musicians and just in their own genre. So don't try to say, the best one is such and such.
The way that people play, the way that people do things is
unique to themselves.
No. It's because of how he played, how he started. There's the tapping. There's all the things. There's a lot of things that back in the day. Where people were like, "What is this?"
But where did he get his influence?
But he he took playing in a different direction where people would start doing those things.
No, I
days.
totally agree
You know
with
what
that.
I'm
But I'm saying I think everybody's influenced by somebody. We're not in the
Yeah, his influence.
we're
His
not in the
father
boat
was
by
a
ourselves.
musician. There, you
really
know what I'm
was.
saying? Yeah. His
But I mean,
father,
there's a lot of amazing black musicians back in the 20s. I mean,
right.
Like,
but I'm talking about
huge
the
players
actual guitar itself, the way
Of
you
course.
play and stuff like that. He was an innovator. You know what I'm saying? So there's a set of standard of things that he set. That
of course, and I
you
think
know,
I think that can be said pretty much for a lot of people. I think all music, whether it how you sing or play an instrument, or whatever, it's unique to you, and that's what makes it so. It's what brings that special feature to it. I'm going to throw a name out there that probably neither of you would think of, but I think Nancy Wilson is one of the best guitar players ever.
With heart.
yeah,
I'm saying.
That ovation, Brownback Ovation, that
Oh, my
intro for some of his
God.
tunes.
yeah.
I'm just saying, putting it out there for the sisters, and
Lita Ford back in the 80s metal. Oh
my God.
Lita
Yeah,
Ford. I
Lita
saw her at
Ford.
a Marriott in Roanoke.
Yeah, I saw her.
She had this leather pantsuit on, this leather thing. Oh, and guess what? Bonnie Raitt. I saw Bonnie Raitt.
Bonnie Raitt.
at
I
the
think
Crown
Bonnie Raitt's
in downtown
understated.
Richmond.
I think she's not appreciated.
Stratocaster gal.
Yeah.
Slide, too.
Yeah, does a great slide. So
Yeah.
just throwing those out there. I mean, everybody has got their own, and I think it's because of the music that these people produced speaks to you personally. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I see it.
Joan Jett. Don't forget.
Joan Jett. I love you, Boo. Thanks for sharing your time with us today.
Professional representation. Get a high quality, get someone you really trust, and you can fire it. I've never fired a real estate agent, but if things just don't click, you can terminate that relationship.
You can terminate the relationship, and I think that. Thank you for bringing up that point, and that'll be what we end on. Is do hire a professional. Number two, if things aren't clicking with you, it's not that they might be a bad realtor. It's a chemistry thing. It's like dating. I swear to God, real estate is dating. When you hire a realtor, there has to be a connection that they hear you, you hear them, because you're working as a team for this specific period of time. And if you get involved in that relationship and it really doesn't work and you don't feel heard or whatever, you're not working through the relationship well, it is okay to say, listen, I it's not working for me and I need to talk to your broker and we need to, cancel this listing agreement and move on. I mean, I would not want someone to work with me who just wasn't, if they didn't feel that I was bringing them the value. I'm okay. I would cut. Listen, I've talked people out of selling their houses. You work with me. You don't. It's I draw my own tribe, and I think that's a great point you made. Really.
One last thing. After we started clicking and started, I feeding off her recommendations, blah, blah, blah. She which to her credit, she kind of set a boundary. She said, look, I'm enjoy working with you. This home is going to sell, blah, blah. But just let you know, if you text me late on a Friday,
if you text me at 8 p.m.,
she's a human being with a family and children.
Yes.
I just can't text her at 4 a.m. on a Saturday. Hey, I've got an idea.
Oh,
I expect
yeah,
her to,
and they do it.
Yeah, I say,
I
hey,
get 6 o'clock morning text all the time, and I don't respond. I wait till 8.
I get the 6 o'clock. I get
And
the
you
2
need to stop
a.m.
responding.
I get the 2 a.m.
I'm just telling you. But with that said, the best bourbon is a bourbon you enjoy, and go out there and have amazing experiences with exceptional people, and that is all you need to do.
Love you, sweetheart.
Love you too, precious. See you next time.
You've been listening to the Real Estate and Bourbon podcast, hosted by Dawn Roy. Have real estate or bourbon questions or a juicy story you want us to talk about? Call our hotline at 804-293-0550, and maybe you can be on our podcast. This has been a Studio 77 production. Be sure to subscribe, like, and follow the Real Estate and Bourbon podcast.